Why did the Royals pick Nelson Velasquez over Nick Pratto? We're going to tell you in this edition of Locked on Royals.
You are Locked on Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked on Royals on the Locked on Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can follow me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You also can reach us on wherever you get your podcast. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast. We're on Odyssey. We're also on YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. March Madness is still in full swing, so there's no better time to go and create your FanDuel account than today. After this podcast episode, go and create that account. Use our code that we'll be giving you a little bit later on in the show and start winning some big-time money today. If you're a first-time listener, of course, welcome in. You can always be excited about Royals baseball, whether it's the offseason, the regular season, it's spring training. Tonight is the final exhibition game the Royals have before the real deal, which is on Thursday. So if you want to know a little bit more about me, why I do this podcast, well, I'm based here in Kansas City at Sports Radio 810 WHB. Got a show over there once a week. Also do some co-hosting during the midday there and do some producing on the side as well. So I stay pretty busy in the sports world. But when you come to this podcast, when you click on this link, you know that you are getting 30 straight minutes of Royals baseball. And man, it's finally here. Opening day week is here. These next few days are going to drag. Tonight, as I said, they're going to be playing the Naturals, and I put that in air quotes because it's the Omaha Storm Chasers wearing the Naturals jerseys. And I know that it's going to be quite an environment. Going to be fun out there at Arvis Bank Park. The guys over at One Royal Way are down there providing excellent coverage, so go and give them a follow. They do awesome work. That's Jordan Foote, that's Josh Kaiser, that's Joel Penfield. All three of those guys just really putting in the work and doing some great job. I've already seen a couple of the posts they've had. So look forward to all their content all night long. And yes, I have no problem cross-promoting other podcasts and other Royals accounts because we just want to provide a lot of content for this baseball team, and we're not trying to bring down anybody else. The One Royal Way, KC Sports Network, do an excellent job providing you guys some Royals insight, and they're going to be there tonight. But as for the next few days, as I said, it's gonna drag on a little bit. We all know that when you get this close to opening day, it feels like these days just drag. Work really drags, and you just want it to be Thursday. I'll be out there. I can't wait. I'm going to be tailgating. I took the day off work, so I'm going to get a podcast episode that morning before I actually head out to Kauffman Stadium and gear up for the Royals and the Twins. And today's episode is going to be really injected with a lot of life and a lot of optimism because right before I went on this podcast, we got word that Michael Wacha's hand is just fine. And when I was going over this schedule and breaking down the segments, I didn't know what I was going to be talking about with Michael Wacha. I didn't know if it'd be good news, bad news, semi-good, semi-bad. I wasn't really sure. But now, fortunately, I can tell you with all positivity, Michael Wacha is not missing any time. So one more exhibition game to go. And then at that point, we don't have to stress and worry about guys getting banged up before the regular season. But I think what's been on everybody's mind, I even got reached out to on Twitter about, this sort of situation involving Nick Pratto and Nelson Velasquez. And this individual wanted me to do an entire show dedicated to it. And I don't blame him. I mean, I think a lot of people have questions as to why Nick Pratto, after the spring he turned in for the Royals, which I can now say was the best among any player on the Royals, that he's still going to be going down to AAA Omaha and will be in the lineup tonight for the Naturals and going up against what looks to be the Royals' opening day lineup. But I think it's very simple. I don't think we really need to get worked up about a move like this. I mean, it's one thing if the Royals picked Nick Pratto, if they picked a veteran, a guy that wasn't very good over Nick Pratto. I mean, Nelson Velasquez is a young bat, and we were all for Nelson Velasquez at the end of the regular season. So it's not like it was in the past where the Royals are picking a Lucas Duda to go over there at first base or DH or Carlos Santana they have a young bat that's going to be the DH. And if he takes off with that job, Nick Pratto is going to have to work a little extra harder to get a spot on this roster at some point in the season. But that's why I'm not getting so worked up about it. And I think if you go back in a couple of my past episodes, I remained somewhat consistent until the very end. I'm not going to say I was 100% right because I wasn't. On Friday, I was asked about the decision, and I said, I think it's going to be Nick Pratto over Nelson Velasquez because Alec Marsh beat out Jordan Lyles in spring, and I thought the same was going to happen for the DH spot. But when it boils down to it, the Royals put more stock into the regular season than spring training. And Nelson Velasquez was better at the end of the year in the regular season than Nick Pratto was. And spring training numbers, even though they're the only thing we can go off of baseball-wise, they're not the end-all, be-all. I'm going to continue to bring up the number that, Chris Owings hit 460 for the Royals in 2019. And that was spring training. And then he goes into the regular season and he hit sub 120, I believe it was. I mean, that's just the way it goes. So for Nick Pratto, it's not giving up on him. It's not, you need to trade him now. He's blocked. It's more so that they want to see him do it in Omaha first. They want to see him do it in regular season games. And if Nelson Velasquez can't cut it, well, guess what? Nick Pratto can take his spot in the lineup. This isn't the end for Nick Pratto. This isn't the let's bury him and he's never going to be up in Kansas City. I think this is simply the Royals put more stock into what Nelson Velasquez did at the end of last year than what Nick Pratto has done in spring training. And I also look at this lineup and I want Nelson Velasquez to take this job and run with it. I think that would be better for the Royals. There's no problem in having multiple guys that are good at that spot. Maybe it comes to a situation at some point this season where you platoon a Nick Pratto and Nelson Velasquez. Who knows? But I know for the beginning of the year, you pick guys that you want to take the job and run with it. And really, the only true injury that's going to shake up this roster a little bit is Michael Massey. Now, the bullpen, I probably should walk that back. The bullpen is going to be without Carlos Hernandez and John McMillan, and they'll join the team a little bit later on at the beginning part of the season. But for the 1 through 9 lineup, Michael Massey dealing with that back problem, it's likely he opens up the year on the injured list. So Adam Frazier, it appears to be the opening day second baseman for the Kansas City Royals and not Nick Loftin. I got asked about that. We'll talk about that in the final segment of today's show. But really, they look at Vinny Pasquantino, Michael Garcia, Nelson Velasquez, some of the younger guys in the lineup, MJ Melendez, another, to take that spot and run with it. They're also not against somebody in AAA really earning their spot onto the roster. And Nick Pratto is going to have to be one of those guys. I mean, let's all be honest here. It's not like we haven't seen Nick Pratto at the big league level yet. Nick Pratto had a lot of glaring holes to his game last year. And for the Royals, there's no rush. You don't need to him into the everyday lineup and say, because of spring training, he's easily fixed and he's going to be great from here on out. We want to believe that, right? I think the way spring training goes is the guys you want to succeed are the ones that you believe have real numbers in spring training. The guys you dislike, it's like, yeah, no wonder they suck. Those numbers are terrible. Not a good player, right? Nick Pratto needs to prove to the Royals organization that spring training was not a fluke, that I can go down to Omaha and be just as good, maybe not as good because those numbers are not going to be really able to be duplicated in terms of a 30 or 40 or 50 game sample size. It'd be nice, though, to have a 20 game set to begin the year where he can just go out there and rake in the same way that he did in Surprise Arizona. But a lot of his, openings at the big league level are going to be due to injury or guys not performing. I think the two guys that he could beat out eventually because of lack of performance would be Nelson Velasquez or Hunter Renfroe. Maybe MJ Melendez, but me in the stance I've taken MJ Melendez. I think that he's going to have that spot the majority of the year unless he really, really bottoms out. I do not see the Royals moving Vinny Pasquantino to make room for Nick Pratto. So as concerning as that may be to you as a Royals fan, don't also take this and then hope Nelson Velasquez fails. I know there's going to be one player Royals fans target, and if Nick Pratto is hitting in Omaha, it's going to be like, I want this guy to be benched. I want him to be cut, outright released. Nelson Velasquez is a young hitter. Nelson Velasquez, in my opinion, has also had more shine to his big league career than Nick Pratto has. Pratto's had his moments, but I'm also not going to scoff at 14 home runs and 150 plate appearances last year for Nelson Velasquez. The power is real. I'm not really worried about the slow spring. he could start slow. I'm not naive to that, but that's because he's a young hitter and he's going to be adjusting. If Nick Pratto hits well and Nelson Velasquez doesn't, they're going to flip. They're going to swap. The Royals are all about earning your spot and being able to keep your spot. And so for spring training, we could bring up the Alec Marsh and Jordan Lyles debate, but let us not forget, Alec Marsh was better in the regular season last year than Jordan Lyles. So that's why I think this decision was made based off spring training and a little bit of the regular season. But last year, Nick Pratto was not good to close the year. Velasquez was. They put more stock into that instead of spring training numbers. And I think that's actually the right way to go about it. Royals and Naturals / Storm Chasers will play later on this evening, actually coming up in about an hour by the time I'm doing this podcast at this moment. So probably right before the game begins, we'll get this podcast link out. So hopefully no internet hangups until that point. Okay, we're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, Michael Wacha got banged up in an inter-squad scrimmage right before they left Surprise, but there's no reason to sweat about it now. We'll tell you why next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can follow me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. Before we go any further, I want to give a shout out to one of the title sponsors today in FanDuel. Now, with FanDuel, say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the NCAA tournament. Whether you're betting on a big upset or seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines, and you can even pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. And it's actually easy for a lot of people out there right now. I'm not saying it's risk-free or anything like that, but it's been chalk in the NCAA tournament. A lot of the 1 seeds are advancing. A lot of the 2 seeds are advancing. A lot of the 3 seeds. So if you just want to win a little bit of money and feel safe about it, well, go and create your FanDuel account, use our code, and start putting money on UConn or putting money on Purdue or Houston or North Carolina, whoever you want to, because so far they're winning people a lot of money. So go get yourself taken care of over on FanDuel today. Well, we had a little bit of a scare yesterday afternoon. It was a Sunday, so I was taking it pretty lazy. Knew I wasn't doing a podcast episode, was just trying to stay a little bit up to date on what was happening, not so much with the Royals, but around Major League Baseball, and just gearing up for Thursday. You know, at that point, I'm running out of conversation points. I'm running out of projections. I can only talk about Nick Pratto and Nelson Velasquez for so long. Like, eventually, I was just dying for new content. I'm like, we got 3 or 4 episodes to go before the real deal. I would like for something to talk about. That's the way that podcasting goes. Like, you are gifted some great opportunities, and you can milk those opportunities, for lack of a better term, for segment ideas and content ideas. And I was running a little bit dry with segment ideas. But I didn't want to have this sort of situation be my talking point, which was Michael Wacha getting hit by a line drive or a comebacker in the final game. I can literally say the final game the Royals had in Surprise. And it wasn't even against an opponent. It was an inter-squad scrimmage. These were just guys getting work in. It was Seth Lugo versus Michael Wacha. And of course, I knew the minute that happened what the reaction was going to be. And that was going to be a lot of angst, a lot of, oh, of course, only can happen to the Royals. We can't have nice things. I knew all of that was coming, right? But where I chose to take the approach was where a lot of people didn't. No, I said the Royals were optimistic he was going to be fine. So I'll go off that. I don't need to say this is a doomsday scenario. Oh, Michael Wacha is out for the year. But I'll be honest with you. I did some research on finger contusions and contusion injuries for a pitcher and a broken finger, a broken hand, the timeline for all of that. And so I put myself in a best case and a worst case scenario. The worst case scenario, because it was a finger contusion and it wasn't a hand problem, it was, well, I guess you can say the finger's attached to the hand, so it can be classified as a hand problem. But I thought if you can identify it's a finger contusion, then it would either be a contusion, a bad bruise, or a broken finger. And I thought, okay, so let's say broken finger is the worst case scenario here. Well, a broken finger puts you out for like 4 to 6 weeks. So Michael Wacha would miss the first month of the year. And then you worry about, well, how does it heal? Does the swelling go down? He has to build the arm back up again. It would be problematic, but not the end of the world. But I've seen so many teams handle injuries the exact same way in spring training. Like when things aren't good, they're going to tell you things are not good. Like the only thing that made me concerned is that Andy Rogers, beat reporter for the Royals at MLB.com, said that it looked like Michael Wacha was in a lot of pain. But who wouldn't be when they get hit by a hard ball at 100 to 105 miles an hour and hits you flesh on the hand? It's going to hurt a little bit. But the good thing is we get word right before this exhibition game between the Royals and the Naturals that Michael Wacha is just fine, not missing any time. And in fact, he woke up today and completely forgot about it. That was per Matt Quatrero down there in Springdale for this exhibition game against the AA affiliate of the Royals. So good news there. Michael Wacha doesn't feel bad. No, I'm still holding my breath and crossing my fingers. Nothing happens with the Royals' everyday players out there for at least a couple of innings against the Naturals in front of a sold-out Arvis Bank Park. But this is where I looked at it, and people are going to get upset and go, oh my gosh, I can't believe the Royals were throwing guys in an inter-squad scrimmage before they left for Springdale. Well, every team is trying to build up their pitchers, right? It's an inter-squad scrimmage. That stuff can happen in baseball. Guys getting hit by line drives. Guys get hit when they're batting, right? Some pitcher could be a bit erratic, and they hit you on the hand, or they hit you on the knee or the ankle, and it sidelines you for a little bit. So I'm not trying to say the Royals were doing anything wrong. It was more so of just bad luck. But now you can wash it away. Michael Wacha is not missing any time. And in fact, Matt Quatrero said the rotation alignment, what it was going to be to begin the season, they're going to have Reagans on opening day, Seth Lugo on Saturday for game 2. That I thought this was interesting. Brady Singer, game 3, series finale at Kauffman Stadium. And then Michael Wacha will be the game 1 starter for that Baltimore series on the road. I think it's interesting only because they're going to put Brady Singer at home at Kauffman Stadium instead of, I can't really call it a bandbox anymore because Camden's much bigger, but they're going to go with the experienced guy, the better arm to face that Baltimore lineup and Michael Wacha. I think that's exactly why Wacha is the number 4 starter to open up the year and not Brady Singer. But again, outside of the opening day starter, it really doesn't matter where you're throwing. You could interchange Seth Lugo and Michael Wacha easily. You could interchange Alec Marsh and Brady Singer very easily. So that's not something that really is of concern to me. But man, talk about a sigh of relief there. Damn, does it feel good to know that Michael Wacha is just okay. Because we all know the win that would be taken out of the sales for the season. It was like, man, Michael Wacha, one of the guys we spent a lot of money for, is going to not even be on the team to open up the season because of an inter-squad scrimmage because he got hit by a line drive. Like, that's frustrating as hell. That would be an absolute gut punch. What opening day represents. Fresh start, a new team. It's like I can live, even though it does suck to not have Michael Massey. I think Michael Massey was going to bounce back, and I still think he does. But it sucks to have probably Adam Frazier out there instead of Michael Massey. It sucks that Carlos Hernandez and John McMillan are not there out of the bullpen. But they're also guys that I know aren't going to have lingering problems, or at least you hope it. It's not a detrimental injury. If the Royals can get through tonight with no injury, and that means substantial injury, like an elbow problem, a hamstring problem. I know that Jake Brent's had a hamstring problem, but I don't think he was ever really going to make it to Kansas City at some point because of his command issues. But the Royals could get out of here without any really problematic injuries. And I think Matt Quatrero is going to play this really smart tonight of you get everybody one at bat and then you send them on their way. And it doesn't matter whether you win or lose. In fact, the Giants played the River Cats the other day and lost 8-1 to their minor league affiliate. It doesn't matter. I know exactly the way the Royals Twitter is going to react if the Royals lose this game, but I don't imagine the starters are going to be out there that long because they know on Thursday the real deal starts, and the last thing you want is somebody getting banged up. That Michael Wacha freak thing that happened, getting hit by a comebacker, probably had the light bulb flicker on in Matt Quatrero's head of, let's avoid something like that. You know, let's make sure that these guys are healthy and good to go on Thursday and don't have some bad bruise they're dealing with or some nagging problem. They already had 3 guys that were going to be on the opening day roster that are dealing with that. Let's just get through these next couple days, get us to opening day so we're not worrying about it that much longer. Okay, we're going to take our second break and our final break of the show at that. But before we do that, let's give a shout out to Locked On Sports Today. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Well, make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. When we come back, is it going to be Nick Loftin or Adam Frazier starting over Michael Massey on opening day? We'll tell you next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. Be sure to give me that follow on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. Before we go any further, let's give a shout out to the other sponsor today in Amazon Fire TV. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Well, as I just brought up in the Michael Wacha segment, injuries are a part of baseball. Some of them are freak injuries. Some of them are nagging injuries. Some of them are directly related to a player doing too much, right? I think a perfect example was like Byron Buxton for the Minnesota Twins, who the Royals are going to see on opening day. Well, Buxton's gotten hurt so many times, just almost going too hard or running into the wall, just trying to make a play. It's like those might be a little bit more to your doing. But also, are you going to tell a player to not go 100%, to not give max effort? It's tough to tell a competitor that. But I think there's all different forms of injuries. There's tiers to those injuries. And the Royals, assuming they can get through it tonight, I'm going to knock on wood, because that Michael Wacha comebacker really put some anxiety and some fear into my heart, because it's like, of course, the last day of spring training and the Royals are dealing with a possible injury to a guy in the rotation. But the word came out from Matt Quatrero before the game tonight that he's all good. In fact, he woke up and completely forgot that he got hit in the hand, or at least that's what we'll go off of for this thing. But the Royals have also had some guys with nagging injuries. And one that I do believe is unfortunate is the nagging injury they have at second base, and that's Massey. Michael Massey is, I think, hit or miss with a lot of Royals fans. Some want to give him the benefit of the doubt of, hey, give him one more chance. I really think there's a true player in there. I think there's a second baseman that can be very playable and maybe more than playable, being an above-average second baseman because of his defense and maybe a little bit of the pop that he has in his bat. A guy that can potentially run into 20 home runs. That's the crazy thing about this. Michael Massey hit 15 home runs last year or around that and barely could hit at all in the first month or two of the season. Like, he does hit well in the first 2 months of the season. You don't think that 5 home runs could come from that? There's a 20 home run second baseman there. So that's where my hope for Michael Massey kind of sits. It's a good defensive second baseman. He's got power. All right. No, he's not the super high OBP guy that everybody loves to have, but not everybody's going to have second base. If I told you that Michael Massey could be one of the better defensive second basemen in all of baseball and could pop 20 home runs, would you take it? I probably would. I won't give you the average. I won't give you the OBP. I won't give you the slug. 20 home runs, good defense. Would you take it right now? I'd probably say yes for second base, considering the bad second baseman that the Royals have had in the past. So that is disappointing to me that Michael Massey may not be on the opening day roster. In fact, I'm leaning that way anyway. I don't think he's going to be there in the first couple series because it's the back injury, and back injuries can linger a little bit, or it's back soreness. Tonight's lineup includes Adam Frazier. All right, so Adam Frazier is in the lineup. He is at second base, and that can be looked at as he is the opening day second baseman, or the Royals are going to platoon to begin the year. Maybe they go Frazier against righties, which I think Minnesota will throw only righties, their first 3 starters in the rotation. And then when lefties come around, that's when Nick Loftin will be there. It also could mean that they don't think Michael Massey is going to be out that long. So instead of throwing Nick Loftin into the fire, who's only got 20 games under his belt, Go with the guy who started 141 games or played in 141 games for a 100-plus win team last year. Adam Frazier's been around the block. Adam Frazier's been an all-star before. That's why the Royals signed him. You may not like the numbers. You may not like what you saw in spring training, but Adam Frazier's been around the block. And that is going to upset people. I would have gone with Nick Loftin as the opening day second baseman. I'm leaning toward to be Adam Frazier just because I think tonight's lineup is not a coincidence. I think this lineup is likely the same one we're going to see on Thursday, but it's not the end of the world. The best case scenario is Michael Massey, if he starts the year on the 10-day injured list, which if Nick Loftin made this team, which Mac already said he did, that would mean that Michael Massey is on the 10-day injured list to open up the year. But if that is the case, which 99% sure it is, he's back in 10 days or 11 days or 12 days. So you only have to start Adam Frazier for 10 or 11 games, and then he goes back to being a bench piece or a depth piece. So that's what I'm hoping for here. I don't want to see Michael Massey be sidelined for the first half of the year to get this back situation figured out. It's not what I want to see at all. But that feels like Royals are taking it. It does not seem like there's a lot of fear in the clubhouse or there's a lot of concern that this is going to be much worse. Like I said, with the Michael Wacha thing, a coach, a manager, an athletic trainer, a front office personnel, they're going to tell you if things don't look that good. I just think that's what the Royals are going to do. That's what a lot of teams in baseball have done. Like for the guys that are out for the entire year, like go back to the Lucas Giolito situation in Boston. Alex Cora went out there and said it just doesn't look good. And we're going to look for a second opinion, but it does not feel very positive at this moment. And lo and behold, Giolito's out for the year. But when they're just nagging injuries, and we're going to put him on the 10-day injured list to be cautious about it, let him really heal up, and then he'll be ready to go. Then I'm going to take their word for it. In the same way I took their word for my situation yesterday. He's got a banged up hand. We feel optimistic he's fine. And then Michael Wacha woke up and didn't even remember he got hit on the hand. And that's not because he's got some, forgetfulness or he's dealing with someone there. I think it just doesn't hurt that bad. There's no swelling there. So for Michael Massey, until they give us reason to go, this could be a really problematic injury. This could be something that hangs with him all season long. Then I don't need to think that way. But if it was going in that direction, I have this gut feeling that they would have picked Nick Loftin over Adam Frazier. And I think Adam Frazier at this point is going to be the opening day second baseman. I've been wrong a handful of times this year. So again, don't take my word as the end all be all. I'm going to give you my opinion. I'm going to give you what I think, but I'm also completely open to cold takes exposed and people telling me that I'm wrong because I have been wrong numerous times with how this roster has been constructed. But if Michael Massey's problem was going to linger or it was going to be longer than the 10-day IL, and who knows, maybe it does. Maybe it progresses to that. But it just seemed like Michael Massey just needs some time to rest it a little bit, not overdo it, not be taking batting practice, just slowly work back up. And then you can roll forward with it. If that wasn't the case, I think Nick Loftin would be ready to go. I think Nick Loftin would be the choice. But Adam Frazier's there simply for depth this year. Adam Frazier is for spots like this. If somebody gets banged up, you can turn to a guy who started a lot of games for a very good baseball team last year. And to me, that is good to have. It's not always going to work out, but it's good to have someone to turn to, not somebody that was a reserve last year. That's the difference, right? If Adam Frazier was a bench guy last year and now he's thrust in the opening day starter spot, I'd be a little bit iffy on it. But he did start a lot of games last year for Baltimore. He started a lot of games in his big league career. He was an all-star. And even though the numbers aren't as good anymore, he's fine for a placeholder for 10 days or 11 days. If it's longer, then I would like to see the transition over to Nick Loftin. As I said, I'd rather it be Nick Loftin as the opening day starter, and maybe it still could be. But right now, my gut's telling me Adam Frazier, and my gut's also telling me this Michael Massey injury is not as bad as maybe some people are thinking that it is. Okay, that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. Be sure to give me that follow on Twitter X at JohnnyJ_15. Before we say goodbye, one last shout out to Locked On Sports Today, our 24/7 streaming channel. We bring you the analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Tomorrow, we're going to recap what happened in that game against the Naturals and preview the upcoming opening day game against the Minnesota Twins. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.